It's absolutely so critical to stay mission focused because we're people serving organizations. And when there is need and increasing need, it's so easy for our missions to creep, for us to do more, to find ourselves kind of allocating or giving resources that sometimes we don't have. It's being very intentional about understanding where you are strong. A more comprehensive planning process will also give you context in understanding the world around you. What is your strategic positioning in your particular area?
You're listening to The Nonprofit Boost, where double the donation and industry leaders share practical tips to help you grow revenue and boost corporate fundraising at your nonprofit. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nonprofit Boost podcast. I'm your host, Immaculate. This podcast episode provides an opportunity for organizations to evaluate current strategies, embrace experimentation, and utilize technology to forge more resilient and sustainable futures. We will delve into the do's and don'ts for securing your mission amid a rapid landscape change. And joining me is Elizabeth Grant from Schultz Williams, a senior consultant specializing in strategic planning and revenue growth. She excels at building high-performing programs and bridging the gap between complex organizational challenges and sustainable mission-driven success. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Hi, Immaculate. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Really excited to, talk and see what we can learn from each other today. Yeah. So, Elizabeth, you do bring 20 years of experience, helping teams connect the dots when missing pieces are missing. So could you share a little defining moment from your career that kind of helped shape your approach to serving nonprofits?
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to. Before I do that, I want to thank you again for having me. I'm really excited to think about our conversation because obviously this is a rapidly changing moment for in all kinds of ways for the organizations we work with. It's hard because our work is so mission focused. So we have a lot of those moments, right? It's kind of what gets us out of bed every day and keeps us going and, provide learning and direction as we go. So if I can think of one moment, as you said, my background is largely in programming. So I think I'd go all the way back to my very first full-time job in the nonprofit world. And that was as a professional development specialist for a museum in New York.
Gotcha.
And my role was to work with teachers to develop professional development, to lead professional learning, workshops and institutes and things like that for them. And I think I can say it was a humbling experience. So here I was, this newly minted PhD, all fresh-faced with my book learning. And I came to this job and I was standing in front of these incredibly experienced New York City school teachers thinking, like, what on earth can I teach you about teaching? Like, you are the experts. And I learned quickly, maybe not quickly enough, but I learned, it wasn't really about that so much. It wasn't about me being the expert in the room as it was about understanding and being clear with them about what I could bring into our time together. And that would be, I could help them understand what was in the collections, bring the collections into their classroom, learn new historical content and scholarship and have access to that. That was my job. So I had to understand that and then recognize what they brought into the experience and their, years of on the ground experience, their understanding of learning pedagogy and classroom management and all these things, right? And how to be a 7th grade teacher in Queens. So they had all that. So I had to kind of recognize what I had, what they had, and then create space for everybody to learn from each other. So I think that it was through that experience that I really developed this facilitator mindset and a certain set of skills that's have stayed with me, and like those things like active listening or adapting in real time and communicating clearly and even conflict resolution sometimes, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And those skills, I still carry them in my job. And I think it's effective in a lot of different ways as a manager or as a team leader, that I enter conversations not so much thinking like, how can I be the expert in the room or answer all the questions, so much as how can I drive this conversation forward? Like, where is everybody coming from? Where do we want to go? And how are we going to get there? So you asked, for something that was formative in how I work with nonprofits, right? And I think if you zoom out, those skills that I was talking about are equally, or they're the foundation of effective strategy. It's being able to ask the right questions, not being afraid of the answers you're going to get, and understanding those different stakeholder experiences and perspectives, and thinking about it in that wider landscape. So in my work now with Schultz Williams, we're a national firm. And we do strategic planning as well as fundraising, consulting, and direct response work with nonprofits of all sizes and scales across the country. So there's no one size fits all solution. And that kind of approach to partnership as a facilitator and that strategic mindset, those are the things that I know that when I come into a client relationship, those are the things that I'm bringing to them and providing that kind of outside perspective and support.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Elizabeth. Just learning a little bit more about yourself. I'm even more excited to kind of learn and delve into this conversation because you seem to have like a lot of unique perspectives and understanding and the foundations. So again, we are talking about emergencies and stressful situations. And that's something that's been going on, I think, since a few years now. And last year too, that conversation was always happening in the end of the year and a little bit into this year. But a thing that also comes up is like there's still studies saying that philanthropic sectors are really continuing to show resilience and like innovation. And you talked to a few organizations successfully managing this emergency mode. So let's dive into the do's and don'ts for securing your mission amidst all these changes.
Sure.
We're going to talk a little bit about this article that I read regarding Schultz and Williams. It didn't say this word for word in that article, but what I had gotten from the summary was that like organizations shouldn't jump into these emergencies blind and just react. So I was like wondering what's the emergency mode and what should you not be, what is like what's it called? A solution not a solution. The difference between jumping in blind and not jumping in blind.
Yeah, no, I love that question. I don't need to kind of outline the emergency mode, right? Like we all know since 2020, like just the range of different curveballs that we've been seeing coming our way. I think this moment does feel a little bit different. We had a moment of pivoting post-COVID, and now suddenly it feels a little bit more existential, right? The landscape is shifting in a way on all fronts. On the giving side, kind of role of nonprofits and their relationship with things like government and just things outside our world, just an instability, AI. It just feels every corner, right? It's kind of coming at us. So that's our emergency mode. And I do think to a certain extent, we're seeing some of the skills and strategies that were applied in COVID are still being applied now. Organizations are thinking about certainly coming to us and talking to us about certain types of contingency planning, how to navigate uncertainty at this moment. Should they lose their funding, or should they lose a certain program, or have to make some other kind of change? And so we can provide that level of support and thinking not only through what are the risks and what might be the right responses, but what are the decision points? How do you communicate about those, and how do you kind of continually monitor? So that kind of contingency planning is definitely something that we see in our being asked about. We always say that type of planning is only going to be as strong as your strategy is. It starts, you can't contingency plan out of a crisis. You can navigate it, but you do need something stronger and foundational beneath that that strategic plan. This emergency mode, right, is giving way to things like contingency planning, shorter term plans. Like the 3-year plan has certainly been a reality for a while, but we're even, working with organizations to think about 3-month, 6-month planning so that they can sort of successfully navigate implementation of bigger goals and bigger parts of the overall strategy, but on a shorter timeline. Jump to the second part of your question, which was about, not going in blind. I think some of those contingency planning and shorter term planning are a little bit representative of the reactionary moment that we're in. And as I said, I think they are kind of muscles that we developed during COVID when it was more about pivoting rather than long-term change. And so I would, say that it always comes back to that strategic planning and having that longer-term understanding of where you want to go that's grounded in, or a longer-term alignment on where you want to go that's grounded in your understanding of where you are right now. Strategic planning can bring as a process and as an output. So when it comes to, if you're going to give that time to strategic planning, it can really build a few things, right? It can create connection across you and your team and your key stakeholders. And of course, that includes your board and your donors, because you're not making decisions in a vacuum. You're bringing all these diverse perspectives together and you're sharing them and learning from each other. Planning, when it's, a more comprehensive planning process, will also give you context in understanding the world around you. What is your strategic positioning in your particular area? What do you do well that maybe other organizations don't? What are you doing that other organizations do better? Where's your opportunity to leverage connection, context? And then I think it's that if there's a third C, it would be collaboration. Ensuring that you're aligned around that vision and mission, and you're getting really clear on those priorities and what you're going to do to support them in the near to slightly further down the road future. So that's kind of what the process does, and then the result, of course, is a touchstone that you can use through these challenging times. Or any challenging time, to stay true and stay on course. It's not a to-do list, right? We always say that, and make sure everyone knows your strategic plan is not a to-do list. It does not inhibit your own genius. It does not it's a tool that you can use to navigate your way, navigate in a successful way, but also really difficult challenges.
Nonprofits are always being asked to do more with limited time and resources. Double the Donation's virtual summits offer practical insights, expert advice, and actionable ideas to help you grow your impact. Check out the summit calendar and register at doubletheDonation.com/virtual-summits. We'll see you there. No, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, because again, when you're in an emergency, sometimes I'm thinking of it like if you were like a first responder, and then versus if you weren't a first responder. Like a first responder is probably trained in how to handle these situations, and then if you weren't trained in that, like sometimes you kind of easily lose focus, and you're like, wait, what should I tackle first? So having just bite-sized, actionable steps is really helpful during an emergency. So thank you so much for sharing that. You kind of you kept saying strategic planning, and I just wanted to see if it's like, is that connected to the topic of like staying mission focused? Because that's something that I also kept seeing in y'all's work. It's more important to stay mission focused, and kind of want to delve into like why that is so. Is there any way we can expound on that today?
Yeah, no, I'm actually, because when you said about first responders, I was like, yeah, you do triage, right? It's there. I'm not a first responder. I'm not completely wrong. I've watched The Pit, right? You check for a pulse, you check for like the blood pressure, whatever, you check those vital signs, and the mission is your vital sign, right? And so it is, it's absolutely so critical to stay mission focused, because we're people serving organizations. And when there is need and increasing need, it's so easy for our missions to creep, for us to do more, to find ourselves kind of, you know, allocating or giving resources that sometimes we don't have in terms of money or people to an expanded scope, right? So ensuring that your mission is truly your North Star helps ensure that you're kind of staying on course and serving it effectively. But I think sometimes being mission focused or staying true to the mission can sort of read like you're not changing and you're staying static, right? It doesn't mean staying the same. So for a lot of organizations, just again going back to our emergency moment, this is actually a moment of evolution. And if you have a really clear understanding of what your mission is now or what it has been, you can start to make shifts more intentionally in what you want it to be to drive the change that, or to reflect a slightly different world or a slightly different need. You can either recalibrate or attenuate in some way to be clearer to everyone about what your focus is and what it is that you do. And that actually is probably the third thing I would say about, just another thing I'd say about the importance of staying mission focused. And that is around communication. Because, we live in a hyper communication world. Here we are on a podcast. And there's content out there. There's lots of communication. And also nonprofits are in this heightened, there's heightened visibility around what nonprofits are doing and even a little bit of scrutiny around what they're doing. And so being clear about who you are and what you're doing, make sure that you're writing your story about what your mission is and how you're serving it, not allowing anybody else to do that. And so that clarity around your mission, around what the organization is, its core purposes and what it seeks to achieve, that's so essential because it builds trust with your internal stakeholders, with your team, with your board and your leadership, because they know and they understand what it is you're about, but also with others. And then you can navigate any shifts building on that level of trust that you've established if you stay clear about what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, I loved your point about this is an opportunity to kind of look in and really grow or even not expand in services. I mean, really understand yourself as an organization and communicate that clearly. Because sometimes, when you're doing so many things, it feels like you're a little lost in the messaging, but this is an opportunity for you to really look at your messaging and see if you're serving the way you're the best way you could be serving community. And if you have the resources to be serving your community, really taking the opportunity to see what your strengths are in an organization and then communicating that. And to your point about, it's really cool if you're able to clearly communicate with your supporters, because if I was a supporter, I feel really empowered if my organization that I support gave me that information and that knowledge and that awareness. And then I'm oh, they trust me with that information. And then it was thank you so much. And then now I kind of also understand as a supporter, oh, this is how I can support this organization that I believe in even better. And so that's really nice as well, especially again, we're in the emergency mode. And as you said, there's so much communication happening. Sometimes you're I'm hearing too many things, but when you hear that clear message, you're okay, I understand. I'm not confused. I know how to help you guys out.
That's right. Be a little bit of stability in this world, right? Yes. For your donors and for your stakeholders. We're staying, all this may be happening, but you know what? We're staying true to what we do. And even if that means a slight, shift in some ways about how you communicate that, or even how you think about yourselves, I think it reflects that you're still, your core purpose is still there, and how you serve it might just look or come across a little bit differently, right? Because you're in touch with where the world is right now. Yeah. And I'm very excited about this because we just, did a whole retreat with a group this weekend. We're really thinking very closely about who they are and how they're serving their the people that they work with, and it might look a little bit, new and fresh, but it's still about serving them.
About serving them.
And what
I love.
they-
They really didn't forget their mission. Which was the question. Let's touch on like one of the last points of the podcast. We did a little bit of do's, we did a little bit of don'ts. We have another don't, which is it says this is like a concept of like don't stick to one fundraising model. What does that mean to you and like your organization?
Diversify your revenue. Make sure you're not too reliant on any one source. And it sounds very, we all know it, we accept it, I think, in our sector, but it's, from theory to practice is really challenging, or not really challenging, but it's something that needs to be done, with a recognition of, it's intentional. So I think actually that's where I would start is that, and we've seen this from a number of clients through fundraising is a key element of any strategic plan is just revenue generation and the business side of things generally. And a lot of clients, particularly who are facing reduced funding, federal funding in particular, or, changing priorities on the foundation level, are wanting to build individual donors, just as an example. They want to switch their revenue model to be more unrestricted and kind of built around individual giving, even like looking towards major gifts. But that's not something that happens overnight, right? It's being very intentional about understanding where you are strong right now in your current funding streams. What can you immediately put your, press on the gas and increase that to be stable? And then where is there opportunity and where is there room to grow? And so being intentional and then creating a real strategy around that, one that anticipates what resources it will take, both human and, financially, to build a model that supports that.
Sometimes you get really excited and you're like, oh, wait.
Right. Like there's that reality. I mean, it pays, right? I mean, it comes with the return, but it does take an investment in the immediate term. Not just to build it, but then most importantly to sustain it, especially when we're talking about those individual donors, right? That retention is so important. So being intentional in creating a diverse revenue stream is important. We've also seen a lot of creativity among our clients in thinking about different approaches to revenue and how they can leverage their mission or maybe some of their assets in different ways. So, that might be thinking about, a nature center, thinking about a fee-for-service model for professional retreats or mindfulness experiences, right? So to bring in the core elements of their environmental program to a different audience, to corporate partners, and turning that into a revenue stream. Or so that's just one example, or maybe looking more closely at partnerships and collaborations and how those can leverage or bring more visibility to your mission, increase your reach, but also allow you to share resources with another organization in these times, or multiple organizations, how you can best serve one community through finding what you have. So like a different type of, and maybe even be stronger when you're pursuing funding by working in partnership together.
Gotcha.
So those two things, being intentional, being creative. And I just, again, these aren't quick fixes. These aren't things that happen overnight, but just over the long term, that being, being more, it leads to greater stability and just having more flexibility in where your funding is coming from.
I loved your point about fostering those mutual benefits that can carry you and again to the long term. So that's really, really nice to hear. And something that we should start implementing slowly but surely. At least you're aware of it. That's like the first step is taking that initiative and actually pushing it forward. So This has been really fun talking to you. We actually are reaching the end of our podcast episode. But I always love ending like our podcast with one actionable advice. So Elizabeth, I had one more question for you. If you had one thing to say that was the most impactful step that a nonprofit can take to secure its mission in the next month, what would be that one step?
I think being bold is really important. One of the things about our moment, right, is it feels like so reactionary to the things that are changing around us. And something that I think about a lot is like, maybe this isn't a time for that. Maybe this is a time for being more visionary and looking like more beyond kind of how you're going to navigate the next surprise around the corner. But like, what kind of world do we as the nonprofit sector want to create? And how are we going to get there? So, looking beyond a 6 month or a 3 month, and really maybe this is a time to go back to 10, 20, 30-year visioning if we can, and think about like what does that world look like? Because we're gonna create it. And it's not just about survival. It's actually about the importance of our mission, going back to mission. How is our mission going to survive for 30 years? So I think being bold is what I would say. And that sometimes means making hard decisions, but doing so from a place that's grounded in knowledge and an understanding of what's happening in the world around you, not being just reactive. Think about how your organization is going to take the step forward
in the next 30 years, guys, because you're going to be there 30 years. I love how you like ended that. Like, first, like at the beginning, I was scared, and now I'm like, oh no, I'm not scared. Like, they're the visionaries now. It's like, okay, you're like taking it into
we're in charge, man. We're in charge.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing that actionable advice. So a lot of people may have some lingering questions, or they would like just to connect with you and Schultz and Williams. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
We'd love to hear from people. I'd certainly love to continue this conversation. You definitely can find me on LinkedIn. And you can find Schultz and Williams on LinkedIn, and we're schultzandwilliams.com. So easy to find us. And please reach out, stay in touch.
I love that. Yay. So to everyone listening, thank you again for tuning in. And to learn more about fundraising or topics like this, feel free to check out our playlist and our other episodes. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified about this episode. Thanks, guys. Bye. Have a good one. Here's your next steps. Visit doublethedonation.com to explore the tools and strategies that schools and nonprofits use to unlock more revenue through corporate fundraising. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your team and peers.